Hello again. Well, today we're going to start a book that's going to take 2 weeks to finish. We're just going to read half of it today, and next week you'll have part 2. It is a picture book version of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You may have seen the movie. You may, or your parents may have read you the whole book, but this is a short version with great pictures. So let's read.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, based on the original book by C.S. Lewis. Adapted by Hiawatha Oram, with illustrations by Mr. Tudor Humphreys. So there's several things you need to know before we read this story. The first is, what is a wardrobe? I mean, we know what a lion is. I'm pretty sure we know what a witch is, but what is a wardrobe? Well, a wardrobe is kind of like a big piece of furniture in which you store clothes, like coats or dresses. And the second thing that may be totally confusing is something called Turkish delight. What is Turkish delight? Well, it's a candy. It's kind of made of a gooey mix of starch and sugar that's got like nuts or walnuts, and it usually has different flavors. Actually, here in Washington, we have something called applets and cotlets that are kind of like Turkish delight. So, back to the story. Once there was, and probably still is, a magic wardrobe. It was made from the wood of a magic apple tree, and you could, if you would, climb through the back to another world, to a magical land called Narnia. But now, that world was ruled by an icy white witch whose wand could turn you to stone and whose power could be broken only with the help of 4 children. And of course, right here on this side of the wardrobe were 4 children: Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, all of whom were longing for adventure. Lucy, the youngest and most longing, was first to push past the furry coats and find herself in a snowy wood under a street lamp where the witch's wickedness had made it always winter.
Always winter and never Christmas. Imagine that, came a voice. It was Mr. Tumnus, a fawn. He was working for the witch, even though he knew it was wrong.
"Good evening," he said, staring hard at Lucy. "You are a human child, are you not? Come through the Wild West woods?"
"No," said Lucy, "through the wardrobe in the spare room." Wardrobe. Spaceum. Never heard of them, said Mr. Tumnus. But someone like you is expected, and a toasty tea awaits you.
After tea, to Lucy's surprise, Mr. Tumnus began to weep so hard that there were puddles all over the floor. Lucy had often wanted to cry like that herself, and was most sympathetic, which made Mr. Tumnus blurt out the truth.
"I'm supposed
to hand you over to her wicked white majesty. But now that I've met you, I can't. I won't, even though I'll be turned to stone if I don't." Lucy promised she wouldn't let that happen. "After all," she said, "a witch is only a witch until someone stands up to her in the right way. So I'll get my brothers and sister, and that's what we'll do." But before Lucy could persuade Peter and Susan that there was a wicked white witch through the wardrobe, Edmund secretly slipped through to see for himself and bumped straight into her. At once the witch saw he was just the kind of boy she could win over with a box of her enchanted Turkish delight. And there'll be lots more of it, rooms full of it, she tempted him, if you'd only bring your brother and sisters to my house. "I will, said Edmund, stuffing and gobbling without stopping to think what might happen to them if he did. "Then I'll make you a king." That beautiful, wickeder-than-wicked witch smiled. So, when a few days later all 4 children did go through the wardrobe together, Edmund was quite ready to deliver the others to the witch, just to get his mouth around more of that magic must-have Turkish delight. Of course, he said nothing as they trudged through the snow in coats borrowed from the wardrobe. He said nothing when they found Mr. Thomas's cave ransacked. He said not a word when a talking beaver told them Mr. Tumnus had been dragged away by the witch's secret wolf police. Lucy, on the other hand, was furious. "Well, that does it," she cried. "I'm not leaving until that witch has had her wand smashed and her wickedness stamped out." Mr. Beaver was thrilled to hear Lucy talk like this and hurried back to his house for a "what to do about the witch" meeting. "You have come at exactly the right time," said Mrs. Beaver. "You have indeed," said Mr. Beaver, "for it is well known that to get rid of the witch, Aslan needs 4 brave and adventurous children." "Aslan?" cried Lucy with a shiver of excitement. Who is Aslan?" "Aslan the Great, of course," said Mr. Beaver, "who created this world and all of us in it. The only one more powerful than the witch." And Mrs. Beaver gathered them closer. "They say he will be at the stone table by tomorrow, but shh, the witch mustn't hear of it, and her spies are everywhere." They were soon so busy whispering about meeting Aslan, they did not notice Edmund sneaking out the back to make his way to the witch's house and more Turkish delight. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found when he got there. Every kind of creature turned to stone, air so cold it was frosted white. The witch's wolf captain stretched out smirking, and the witch in the foulest mood baiting him on sight. "Where are your sisters and brother?" she snapped, her breath forming icicles. I'll get them to you," Edmund managed to say through chattering teeth. "Right now. They're going to the stone to meet someone called Aslan." "Aslan? I knew it. No wonder the temperature's rising in here. Longbeard, my sleigh. Aslan and those children must not reach each other. But keeping to hidden paths and deep forest, the beavers were already leading Lucy, Peter, and Susan to meet Aslan. "Sleigh bells!" cried Lucy suddenly. "Quick, hide! It might be her." "No, look," said Mr. Beaver. "It must be a sign from Aslan." Lucy looked, and her heart leaped. Father Christmas was here. He was not like any Father Christmas she'd ever heard of or seen, nor were his gifts. "I bring you what your adventures call for," he said mysteriously. Lucy held hers carefully. It was a small diamond bottle of cordial made from fire flowers, so magical that a few drops would heal the wounded. At the thought of the wounded, Lucy remembered Edmund. She had the feeling something terrible was happening to him. And it was. Come back next week for part 2 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.